Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started and then see we can loop anyone in who joins. So, what'd you say? Well,
I don't.
okay. Do you want to turn it back on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We're trying to, all
Part of our vision is to
exactly. I was going to say this. You'll see how our process works a little bit. It's like we throw out an idea, we debate it, it takes a really long time, and then we ultimately, Anyway, so I think we've introduced ourselves already, or know everyone already. So it's great to have you all here, and we're really excited to be. I'm really excited to be talking about this topic, period, but also to have roped Doug into talking about this with me because, just because of the essence of the topic, right? This is a shared family vision. So when we're telling some of our story, we'll play out a lot of how I've presented some ideas that I've found in reading or things that we found throughout the world or, throughout life. And then I present it to Doug, and together we try and come up with a way that it works for both of us. So I'm glad to have him here because this is just as much our journey together. And I'm excited to talk about this topic just in general because so often when I'm talking with, or when we're talking with families who are living alternatively or learning alternatively or curious about those lifestyles, a lot of questions come up about, oh, so where's your husband at with this? Or, oh, so, is everyone on board? And so I really like giving space to kind of talk about how we all, have that voice for shaping our lives and for finding our happiness, and not just as adults, but with the children in our lives too. And so I think there is something really valuable to not only hearing each other's stories, but to kind of working through what are some of the challenges we face when we want to give everyone a voice in how our life looks, partners, kids, and how that can all work together to give you some sort of beautiful reality in all of that. So, So a little bit about our story to start. About 5 years ago, I watched a TED Talk, and you can't totally see the picture, but the guy looks uncannily like Doug, which is kind of crazy. So it wasn't the only thing that attracted me to this. The name of the TED Talk was called Sell Your Crap, Pay Your Debt, and Do What You Love. Has anyone seen this TED Talk? Yeah? It's about 15 or 20 minutes, and it's fantastic. I loved it. And at the time, I was on maternity leave with my infant daughter. She had fallen asleep nursing on me. I've got my earbuds in, and I'm watching this thing that had come across my news feed. And I started listening to this guy who looked a lot like Doug, so the Doug look-alike, speak about how in his family they were selling all of their stuff, kind of removing themselves from the American debt cycle that they were part of, and kind of rethinking everything. And as I was listening to this, I was really so engaged in what this guy was thinking. It was kind of like speaking to my soul. Here was someone who was talking about rethinking everything, ways to feel alive, really trying to say what we're doing, kind of take a look around you. Are you living intentionally? You might be living intentionally and still doing those same things, but are you, just sort of take a step back and assess what's going on around you. Is this the life that you're living? Is the life you're living making you feel alive? And for him and his family, like I said, that journey involved them doing what at the time seemed like really radical things, but also part of it was that they sold all their stuff, reworked their jobs, and were now traveling and backpacking with their own infant daughter across Australia. And I was saying, I wish there was a video of me watching this video, because there I am, just sort of with each minute, what? This person was, was speaking what I was speaking, not necessarily what I was thinking, but answering a call to something, a question that I didn't realize was so much on the surface, that not only was I shocked and my mind was racing, but I was getting emotional, because here I was really scared, on one hand, of feeling like I'd done everything that I should have done in life. I went to school, I got the job, I've got the house, I got all the stuff to go in the house, and now I'm with my child, and I'm realizing, I kind of want to rethink everything, but that's not part of my narrative. Part of my narrative is not to now be necessarily home with my daughter and forget about the expenses associated with all of those things. I would have much rather said no mortgage than, and be able to stay home with my daughter. And so I was feeling that really strong, what was that voice inside me, which I realized was, my maternal instinct, or my self-awareness, being like, I knew I did not want to return to work. I did not want to have this baby be held 8 hours by someone else. That wasn't what what I was okay with. And I was also equally scared of telling Doug, hey, so I just, here's all these things that I'm thinking about. And here is what I did. I started thinking, okay, so how the heck am I going to bring this up to Doug? Because now Doug and I we're two very different people, and not just, interest levels, like, he drinks coffee, I drink tea, kind of different. We process things differently. We think about things differently. So in our relationship, I'm the dreamer. He's the realist. I come in and I'm like, I suggest things that seem larger than life, and he suggests things that are, really honest. And somewhere in there is the middle of that spectrum. In the middle of that is our reality, and we love the reality that we have, except at that point in time, when I was on maternity leave, staring at what life would be like, I realized I wasn't ready for that to be our reality anymore. And so I needed to tell Doug, we got to change something. And so the conversation went a little bit like this. Hey, hon, so can we talk?
Uh-oh.
So I've been thinking.
Uh-oh.
Which is how a lot of our conversations start. So you remember that family I saw on the TED Talk, and they did the whole thing with the selling and the traveling, and now they're over in Australia.
Right.
Yeah. So I was thinking, wouldn't that be really cool if we did something like that?
You want to just sell all of our stuff and travel for a year, more?
Well, I don't know, maybe just a few months, and I don't know if you can see that this is what I really meant, but I'm like, just throwing something out there, right?
Start small.
Yes.
And I thought, well, we can go for maybe a month, and in my mind I was like, maybe 3 days up to 2 weeks. And it was like, sort of that conversation for me, what scared the shit out of me, because,
I don't think it's the first time.
It really scared me, because at the time I was working in public school, I had a fine job, I really didn't like it, but it was, my instant thought was, well, money, logistics, money, we have a kid, money, where are we going to go, money. So I was just I was very worried and very nervous, and it kind of stressed me out to even think that Sabrina wanted this, because I knew I was so divergent from it, and it was so far from what I thought could be the case that I didn't want to flat out just say no, even though that was definitely what I was thinking was no, and how to let someone off really, or how to let Sabrina in this case off really easily, because I was just like, well, it's just not going to happen. So now my vision is going to be working really hard to get her not to want to do this anymore, sort of. because I just don't see how it could ever really happen. And but it's funny because when we were trying to come up with this talk, we look back at like this conversation as probably being the linchpin fulcrum of like where things started to turn in terms of how we were envisioning things, because we actually did end up going on a trip, and we went for 3 weeks to Germany, and it proved a couple different things, at least to me. One, that traveling was moderately affordable if you did it the right way. Two, is that we could do it for extended periods of time as a family, even with a young kid. And then it really made me start to see like, okay, well, we're going to start. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we probably are going to be able to start the transition away from this traditional thing. Because like, I don't know how you all grew up, but I grew up as a family vision was your mom and dad went to work from 9 to 5, and then you went to school, and then you all caught up on weekends and holidays, and that was just the vision. And it really wasn't a vision, it was just like, that's just what everyone did. And so it wasn't weird because every single person in my life that I've ever known has grown up that way. And so to radicalize this new vision was really scary and kind of made me a little angry, because I was not, just if I'm being honest, because it was so different and I just didn't think it was possible. It was sort of like how could you even propose this kind of thing, because it's just impossible. It's like, oh, why don't we go to the moon too? You know, like
While we're at it.
Yeah, like why don't we just add that to the list of things that we're never going to do? So so that was like where I was. But then when we really went back and looked at it, we're like, okay, well, this conversation and this thing is really where we started to take like a new shape on where we were going. And then yeah, I mean, that was what, that was 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago, and now we have sort of reshaped where we're going.
And what Doug's bringing up is so, it's so valuable, right? Like, that's just the way things are done. So why think about something different? And I think...
I'm just going to pause. We can just skip this part.
Yeah, I think what we were both kind of realizing, especially with the birth of our daughter, was that there was maybe something more that was okay to explore. And that felt frightening at first, to be like, is it possible for me to have something more? And then it was like, how are we going to come together on this? And so over those years, we did wind up coming together, and it's a little light, of course, but you can see, these are some of the pictures of our adventures as we did wind up traveling, and we did wind up, selling lots of our things and renting out our house and becoming location independent for a year. We also then, through that journey, found, unschooling and, just what our lives wound up looking like with new work that we created for ourselves that we could take with us remotely. So now we are co-working and co-learning together. But
we had like a bunch of failures in between there.
Yeah, it was
like
not
massive, colossal ones too.
Can you turn off the lights just to see your galoshes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ah.
Yeah, so this is travels through, up in the top corner is a picture from that early trip to Germany. And then the rest are actually from pictures throughout our travels in North America. We road tripped across North America, and then the bottom row is from our trips in Mexico, where we were actually with the World Schooling Summit. And so we did wind up, thanks Peter, we did wind up traveling a lot, but yeah, that was all happening with slow steps, and yeah, some things that we tried out worked really well, some things bombed, like, just trying different ventures to make remote income possible, and, we were able to figure that out, but that certainly was a lot of work, and it was a lot of, this worked, this didn't, this was great, this was not. But it also took a life, so it actually became, our reality was a reflection of our shared vision. So the idea that I proposed those, 5 years ago, which was actually someone else's life that I was just like, I like this. Our life it looked more like that person's than it did our, life 5 years ago, but it was not an exact replica of what I initially, proposed, or any of the examples we had seen elsewhere, because it was an idea that I had, but then it became our collective idea when Doug and I, and then our daughter Avery, who by the time we're traveling you can see is much older, all had a say in what our life was looking like and how that was coming together.
And it was funny because when Breen said, well, let's do a thing about shared family vision, I thought to myself, well, we're going to look like frauds because, do we even have one of those? Do we have a document that says what our vision is? Or have we written something down? And then I was worried that I'd forgotten, we had and I'd forgotten it or something like that. So I just thought, I was like, well, do we even have one? And in the course of talking about this, we're going to get to some of the barriers that we found in a second. But, we found that we had we had this vision of these are the things that we wanted in our lives. These are the things that are important to us. And I guess what we can do now is kind of talk about what some of the barriers that we found were, and maybe you guys, and maybe have people chime in here.
One thing, and then I definitely want to go into the barriers. The only thing I wanted to say is that for us, coming up with a shared vision had a lot to do with world schooling or traveling.
Right.
But we certainly, and I guess it started in that. But what we've heard, and the way that our vision has sort of played out over time, is across all of these other areas of our lives. So for some of you, it might be we're trying to come up with a shared vision around unschooling. So, one partner says, I want to, I like this idea of unschooling, and the other partner is like, I'm not sure about that. Or, same thing with potentially traveling, or any of the types of sort of large umbrella things. Free-range parenting, peaceful parenting, and not just the idea of it, the philosophy of it, but also on the day-to-day. So as we dive into what some of the barriers of how you come together as a family, and you can see here, not just the two of us, but also with Avery. This is the sweet spot where the three of us, because our family dynamic has three people, where the three of us meet. That, for us, that initial thing was traveling, but we're still constantly tweaking our vision based off of all the things that come up in our life, not just philosophically, but in the nitty-gritty, in the day-to-day. So you want to dive into some of that?
Yeah, so and one thing we heard, I've heard a lot over maybe the last 2 years, is when we talk about what we've done, I usually get the very specific question of, how did your wife get you to do that, right? So how did, that's the thing I hear from, never, I don't want to be sexist about this, but because I'm sure I know there's different partnership things, but no husband has ever asked me that. Mostly a wife asked me, how did you get your husband, how did your wife get you to do that? And it was at first it was kind of a joke, but then it over time it became one of these things no one got me to do anything, right? So no one forced me to do anything. This is something that we had talked about and worked through, but it just seemed like people struggled with the idea that, and it really spoke to me that one person really wanted to do something, that really what they were saying was, I want to do X, and this person that I love does not want to do that thing, and I just have no idea how to bring it together. And for us, it was traveling. That's what people would go to. But
sure, but it could be anything on the alternative life or learning spectrum, or anything in life. Period. We just all happen to be here talking about all those beautiful things.
So we tried to come up with the things that are barriers to why people can't get on the same page. So the first one we thought was logistical issues, and I would call and I could be, this is where I want to throw it out to other people because we're forgetting something, I'm sure, but I would throw logistical things down to finite resources, time and money. So I said, for me, at the start, was the logistical issue for me was, how would we have the time to do this, and how would we have the money to do it, even to start it. And I think that's where most people sort of ideas maybe die on the vine a little bit, or things come to a screeching halt, or people just fight with each other, I suspect. I mean, I know that we kind of didn't fight about things necessarily, but we definitely disagreed, and it was stressful. And I think that the first barrier, and really probably I could be wrong here, but I suspect it's the biggest one, is this idea of, I don't think I have the resources to be able to devote to this new vision of something, whether it be when Breen said she didn't want to work, I was like, are you nuts? You know, like
we'd never thought about being a one-income household, and so that was all of these things I was throwing at him. I mean, he was like, oh, what? Oh, because I was just coming one after another, like, this is fantastic, we should do this, and he's like, how? And this is where we were just saying that I was really wanting there to be a playbook in life of like, oh, I'm seeing all these people getting from point A to point B. How? To just tell me every single detail. Not that will necessarily be my playbook, but I've got to take from somewhere. I've got to know how you did it, because then I can go and give that playbook to him or give him the cliff notes, and
the
then be
problem
like,
with TED Talks, that like that Man vs. Dead TED Talk, they're great and they're inspirational. The problem with them is you see them at the finish line.
Right.
Like, you see those things when the race has already been run, and so you're like, how hard was that race, dude? They're done, like, guy doesn't even look that tired, like, so, it doesn't get, and so I think it can, to me it pissed me off a little bit, because I was like, well, it's just impossible. So yeah, we saw them at the finish line, but how did they get there? And so that, I think, not being able to see that step by step of, you don't need to just change everything. And by the way, what you think now is probably not what you're going to think 5 years from now. It's probably not going to be what you think 1 year from now. But just starting moving on some kind of path will get you somewhere closer where you want to be, even if it's not backpacking through Asia or whatever, what the original idea was. It's just something. This is awesome.
But so we wanted to list a number of these barriers. So this is one of them, and kind of talk as a group about what everyone's experiences or stories or maybe issues. It doesn't have to be personal, but certainly can be if you want to share things that you've experienced or things you've seen around that might tie in with these different barriers and different kinds of things that have come about from that. Yeah.
Okay, so I have been sort of playing around with this too. I have one problem, and it's that so far I don't like to travel. Mm-hmm. So can you convince me, like, help me understand what are the benefits of traveling that you've seen in relation to unschooling? Because I feel like I could be convinced, but that is the one thing. When I think of planes and trains and automobiles and hotels and strange beds and different foods, my brain almost explodes. So
Yeah.
I don't really travel.
Yeah. Well,
I can answer this. I don't really travel either, really.
Okay.
Like, so I didn't necessarily. The benefit, because I like to just stay at home and kind of just don't do nothing. Like, that's sort of my game plan, really, and not do nothing, but I just don't like it. Like, to you, it just seems like tons of work, and luckily Sabrina does a lot of the back work. But I think the benefit is that especially for us, when we've gotten home from everything, I've always, even though I've kind of at the precipice of it, never really wanted to go. Like, I'm like, I didn't even want to come here. It's not because anybody, it's just because I'm just trying to be honest. Like, but then when I get out, when I am here and I'm doing it, when I leave, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad we went. So I try to remember that for myself all the time, that I don't like. I have an inertia problem when it comes to getting to the place, but then I'm very, very thankful once it's already done. So I think that's would be my, because I'm probably like you, I don't really want to either, but once you're in it and through it, I'm really feel blessed to have done it.
Well, yeah, and I'd also ask, what is the reason you might want to travel? Is it because you see, someone else's example and say, oh, some part of me would like to do that, or is it coming from someone in your family who's saying we would like to try it?
I grew up traveling, so we've been almost every state in the country as a child. I've been to a few other countries as a teen, and then when I got married, and I was like, okay, I don't have to do that anymore. and that was it. But I do remember, like, having my mind open to such a greater degree. And my husband grew up never, I mean, I think his first airplane ride was like to Florida when we were in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was shocked. I was like, are you serious? Like, you've never seen, and, you know, he's only done maybe driving trips to south of the border, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then back. So, I feel like this would be a great thing for our kids, and my husband would probably love it, and I could get into it.
Yeah.
I just feel like how, if I'm not really super inspired to do it, then how am I gonna get my husband to get on board? Like,
There's
Yeah.
other people here too.
Go
Have
ahead.
done tons of traveling.
It's
Like,
also like, it's good to think about, like, so if having your own bed is like so important to you and makes you feel like centered, there are ways to travel like that. Like, you get a Winnebago and you have like a mobile home, and then you always have like the same place you're going back to, and you're still able to like have new experiences and see new things, but have that grounding like home experience. And so it's not necessarily like getting on a plane or driving across the country. Like, you think about what's the important grounding aspect for you, and then you can build a trip around
right,
that.
like a good mattress.
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
Really great foam right on top of it.
And they also give a good example too of when you started with a 3-week experiment, right? So creating smaller, kind of manageable size experiments where you can test things that you're curious about. Which is kind of what we did traveling. Well, we did a lot of experiments, but the most recent one was 3 months. We do a slightly longer stay. We tried a whole bunch of things. A lot of things blew up. A lot of things were great, but we did it to just discover what we liked and what we didn't like, so that we could have a better decision around making a bigger choice for travel. Find smaller steps you can take along the path, and let that give you that feedback to figure out where you want to go from there.
For us, we've been traveling for about 7 years, and I also still don't like the travel part of travel.
you like the destination part.
I like being there.
Okay.
But I have to say the reason we keep going is just the reason you said. It's mind expansion and personal growth. It's just every place we go, we get to reinvent ourselves, and I feel like it's just been such a catalyst for our own personal growth and our family growth that it's something that we just don't stop. But I will also say that, I mean, yeah, I don't know what your for beds and food and stuff like that. One of our favorite ways to travel is actually just to go to a place and plant ourselves there for like 6 months or a year.
So that's, I guess, my other question is, what's the difference between, you know, like, obviously vacation is like 2 weeks, like you were saying.
yeah.
How do you even get to the place where you can do 6 months? Like, my husband can't take the 6-month vacation and then go back to work.
We met a family that had gone to Mexico that, honestly, Melissa went with her kids and the husband stayed home, you know, and they were gone for 3 months or something like that. They were going for, right? Wasn't it like a
Yeah. We've seen
I'm not saying
so.
do that. I'm just
and
saying that
this
there
is like-
have been like other solutions besides everyone just packing up. Like there have been people that have families that have just said, "I'm going to go and you stay here," and yeah. And so
And there are so many creative ways where I've seen people say, here, let's focus on the income piece. Let's focus on how we can make money while we're traveling, or save up enough money. You guys were talking a lot about this yesterday. Save up enough money so that way we can free up time. Just maybe being able to free up time is the big part of it. So, you know, seeing what you can work in with work, or, you know, seeing what's possible within the reality you have before you're ready to make, you know, bigger steps, like you were saying, kind of baby stepping along the way to test what's right for you. And through, you know, and then there are people who are doing, really creative stuff, like deciding, are we gonna, maybe I'll go there with my my partner, and then maybe my partner will go back early and I'll stay on because now I'll feel more comfortable. Like we did all the big transition together. Or, you know, there's really, I feel like if you can think of an idea, I wonder if anyone's done it that way. Someone's done it that way. It's just so creative. And this is where I think the family visioning is hard, because we want to be like, what does that look like for me? And I always wanted someone to just give me that answer, and that answer didn't exist with anyone else except for within our family, because I was going to know what worked for me, what worked for Doug, and what worked for Avery only after we talked together and then tried things out together. Because when we would start to baby step, then we'd say, oh, we do like traveling, but we've realized we only like staying in cities a little bit, and then we like to be out in the countryside more, and we enjoy our experiences so much more there. Or, like we started learning even just what would make our experiences more just richer.
We really learned halfway through that Avery wasn't into it. And it was like, she's like, I'm not driving anymore. So good luck. And so we had to kind of pivot off those things too.
And that was interesting because when we were on our road trip, so we went tent camping on our road trip, and we were sort of toggling between staying in a tent and staying with friends and family as we went across North America. And about a month into it, Avery was like, oh my goodness, can we just make this tent our house? Like this, I can see it, it's perfect, I love it. Mom, please, let's never stop camping. And then within 3 to 4 weeks later, she's like, you remember I said that thing? I don't need it anymore. I changed my mind. And so
I'm actually just not going to be driving in the car anymore either. So, and then we're on the West Coast at the time.
But I mean, we were all sort of feeling that, and then we realized, and we learned through the process, we want to do kind of what you're talking about, let's go to a place and let's just stay there for a while. Traveling doesn't all have to be a certain model, and we are just grateful that kind of, our vision is always sort of adapting to, or how our vision looks is always sort of adapting to the experiences we've just had or new things that we learn because those things are going to change us.
And a lot of those are logistical because we have I think there's other issues too. So a lot of that sounds logistical. There's also philosophical differences where, and I always thought sort of the philosophical differences would be, when we started this would be, oh, you're going to school or you're homeschooling. And those are the two philosophies, and those are really pretty binary, and that's it. But then when we went to the World School Summit in Mexico, I was like, oh my God, every single one of these homeschoolers is totally different in terms of their philosophy. I couldn't even keep up with all the terms, and I wrote them down so I couldn't remember them because it was I lost it. It was free range parenting, world schooling, homeschooling, ultra homeschooling. I don't remember. It was something. I lost my place in my notes. Yeah, so then I think that that's another problem with if you're not on the same page in terms of your vision, and we've had sort of philosophical issues with this. I think sometimes with me just panicking about we're doing the wrong thing, where I'll panic and say, oh my gosh, you can't read, or whatever. Insert really anything that I think about kind of for 10 minutes and then just start to panic about. So I think philosophical differences are another sort of barrier there.
Well, and this we hear a lot about even where other families will, when I'm meeting a family for the first time, and for maybe for a second we'll just focus on unschooling, right? When I'll meet other families in an unschooling community, one of the first questions I'll get is, so is your husband on board with unschooling? And that's one of the first questions that comes up because this is there's a lot of discussion around are partners on the same page when it comes to this. So I'd love to sort of even dive into experiences or questions or things related to, just getting on the same page as partners or as parents with the philosophies of alternative living.
I'll get everyone's on the same page. That was easy.
It's a big challenge for us because although my husband, he's 100% into homeschooling, he wants that from his kids, he wants them to, have that freedom to learn, and in his practice he unschools, which I think is really comical to me because the word unschooling terrifies him. And I told him, I was like, look at the schedule, come to something, just experience something here. And he's like, his response is that, it could just completely turn me off, 100%. He's like, because everything I read is just and I'm like, well, what do you read? So finding a way to make that Venn diagram neat is a bit challenging for us because it's I can see how he unschools, but he can't. And I'm trying to help him find that barrier for himself too. And also I think him working in the rest of the world, I guess, my world. And I could imagine, like, in our world is very different. And it's jolting to the point where I was like, just stop talking to your friends about school. Like, just at all. Trying to help him find community with...
Is that what he's
Just
saying
like that.
when you're?
They're talking about school.
Yeah.
But helping him find people in our community to help him see and not be kind of jolted by that change because he has to go to work.
Yeah.
He can't really see that vision of he will say, he's like, life doesn't work that way. And I'm like, oh, but it does. If we make it that work that way, we can. We have that power. We have that control. And it's hard when he's in the society that tells him you don't have control. So, like,
Yeah,
that's
my
a,
husband too. It's
right?
like eight to 10 hours a day of
Yeah.
just societal
Yeah.
reinforcing. Like, even if he doesn't share what we do with other people to, not have to deal with the judgment, well, they're telling him, oh, my kid got admitted to Harvard
yeah, and
or
he's still
whatever.
hearing it.
And he's
He's reading
still,
the same.
right, and it's like, I can imagine how hard that is to overcome that every single day.
Yeah, and then come home and have me tell them about this amazing thing that happened in the forest today.
Yeah.
Or we were off doing this thing, or
In some ways, it's like a problem. It's like a timing thing. Because like if we got like one half generation pushed out, if it would be less of a problem. Just so there would be more stories like this. Like there's just already so more. Like Life Without Instructions. This is how many years they've been doing this? 2, right? So I guarantee if they tried to do it 15 years ago, no one would have come, right? Or like
Or it
very
would have
few people
been,
would have come. And now there's just the fact that probably these things grow every year. Some of these philosophical differences, I suspect, will be taken care of just by kind of just like any other societal debate we've had, like civil rights or like gay marriage or things like that seem to be an issue to people, but now just are slowly working their way out of the collective consciousness because sort of just whole generations of people are on board with it, and so it's just like young people don't care about any of that stuff because they're just like, who cares, man? And I suspect that this is one of those things that was just sort of unlucky in timing in terms of like some people, like because. You'll have enough success stories, or you'll just have enough friends that were homeschoolers. You've met them at college. Like people will go off and meet a bunch of homeschoolers at college and be like, oh man, they were pretty cool, or they were normal. Because like there's like a big like normal factor that I think worries people about that vision is like, oh my kid, I heard it like in public schools really even very recently. I had a debate with people about homeschooling before we even do it, and I remember a bunch of teachers were like. Said something like, oh, homeschoolers are weird. And I was like, oh man, like we're way far away right now from this. But I think you just get another half generation out and more people just meet people and they just see that they're normal and all of a sudden it's just really not an issue. It sucks for now.
And then
We're the revolutionaries.
What's that?
We're the revolutionaries.
Yeah.
We're setting that this is what's normal and this is another stage,
Right.
I disagree. I mean, it started this way and then came school. So we're doing what everybody was doing all the time. So instead, we're going back to
So
the beginning.
that's the other problem with like bubble talking is that you think the rest of the world is on board with you, and then you walk out and you're like, oh wait a second, I'm wrong.
And I think homeschooling was as big as it is now. It's just the internet was not here, so nobody could hear about a family in Wisconsin bringing their kids in their house. Now you can.
Yeah.
So that's the difference, and the technology is going to give us an advantage with that moving forward.
And I think Terry, is that her name Terry? Terry gave a talk yesterday. A woman gave a talk, and I feel like put back because I've already. What's that? Terry DeMarco. Yeah, and she said, and she made a point about how like the U.S. educational industrial machine is just is churning so hard that it's really not going anywhere anytime soon. But I think that is true, and I also think that the part where getting individuals on board with another philosophy is also not going to be as difficult for the reasons you said, because you can point to these other families that are doing it and they're all cool and whatever, and then sometimes you just need to see that and you think, because we have, one of the reasons we did it was because we have very, very close friends that sort of made the decision a little bit before us to do this, and it just made it easier for us to do it. And so we just saw one family do it, and then that made it easy.
Just one thing I wanted
Oh yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
just to share too, at least like, I mean, for Ren and I, there's lots of things that we aren't fully aligned on. But one of the things I've always tried to communicate is that I'm not so much married to an approach or a way of thinking. For me, it's all about, is it pushing us in the direction that we want to be, that we want to have. So I guess that's maybe an invitation I would consider as well as when you're having these discussions is what we're doing now, is it directing us, and I guess this is part of the family vision, right? Is it getting us towards the kind of family life we want to have? If it's not, then what should we try next to try to get there? Right?
And like, how can you make that? Because there's a sweet spot, right, where everybody's like, yeah, this is where we're all good. But then there's still needs outside of that. So it's different for everybody. And I think that's the challenge to find that balance. Like, you know, like she wants to travel, but like it's finding like, okay, so my husband wants a home base. Like I was like, let's just get it right. Let's go. I'm ready. Let's go get it. And he's like, so he needs a home base. I'm like, all right. So we can still make it work, giving him something he wants that might not be in that sweet spot of what we all want. But like, it's challenging. Like, it's just how do you overcome that when he's not immersed in this? You know, I'm surrounded by people who are unschooling, homeschooling, traveling, and living alternatively, and so to speak. And he's constantly jolted by going in and out. And my vision for him is, I'm like, just get out, you know, and find a way to not have that all the time. But that might not be an option for us. So, and is that his vision? Right.
Right,
Like,
that's what I was
I mean,
asking,
he wants to be with his family. He does not want to. Like, he could go get another job and he could travel and do all that. But he's like, I don't want to miss years with my kids. And I truly value that so much in him. That he wants to be here, but he also wants to provide and give us what we need. But finding
company.
right. That's what I told him. But he's having a hard time seeing that as possible.
I wish there were more jobs, like teaching jobs, where you could have the summer off, or you could take sabbaticals and stuff like that.
There's
Yeah.
so many jobs available.
There are. I need to know what they are.
Well, this is
Go to Upwork.com and
These guys
search
have the
for hundreds of
resources.
them.
What?
Upwork.com.
Upwork?
there's an entrepreneurship panel. Is it later today too?
Mm-hmm.
Is it later today?
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm on
What
it.
is it?
Surprise.
There's an entrepreneurship panel today.
So yeah, there's so it's a great time to be alive.
Yeah.
To find work that you can do from anywhere. There's so many options.
Yeah.
I've tried a lot of them. So not all of them work very well.
Yeah, part of our vision was like restructuring like what we thought, like you said, like because it was really hard for me to see a vision when we needed to make like this mortgage payment. But then when we no longer needed to make that mortgage payment, it was much easier to open up to other things, right? So it was like some things were just contingent on things that I thought were non-negotiables that turned out to be negotiables. And once we figured that out, it was actually not too hard to clear. But that's burying the lead a little bit. It wasn't
the
a
process of saying
yeah.
like, okay, but no, this had like the understanding that it can change.
right.
And I think a lot of times the challenge is seeing that it can change and not being fearful of it being different of the societal norms, so to speak, where you feel safe.
Yeah, because it's super stressful when you're not on the same page. Like, even now, Sabrina will bring up, like, oh, I want to go here, here, and here. And I'm like, I just know I don't want to. And I start to feel, like, tense. because I'm like, I just feel a little, like, anxious about it because we're just not totally philosophically aligned on how much of that we want to do.
And that kind of actually goes into.
So can I ask?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So in that space, to say that, then what's your next step? What do you do?
Yeah.
I hope she forgets. Kind of just like don't bring it up for a long time and just see what happens.
She might let go, but she never.
There's like 99% of him is not joking.
Well, so,
here, but 1% is the joke, right? But so I think that what is it?
No, that's not.
What I love is that I fell in love with Doug. Even though I knew then he was not into traveling. He was glad I had a group of girlfriends that would love to travel with me. And so what I have sort of learned is, because I love him and I also love traveling, and those seem to be like really at odds with each other, I sort of have this strategy in my head. It's like I look at it, I don't want this to come off in the wrong way, but I kind of look at it like a chess board, right? Where if I'm just placing something down, I'm planting a seed, I'm doing something. It's not that I always have ulterior motives. I like Doug said, he feels great once we're doing all those things. but I kind of get what's gonna make him be like, what are you talking about? You just like talked about spending so much money and like
Well,
I'm
right.
not ready and all of this. And so, you know, like when we were planning that first trip to Germany, and I was like, so okay, let me start it kind of just bite-sized for you. I was like, I've got all the frequent flyer miles covered, you know, like that covered our flights. So I know that for him, the money thing is big. So if I come in and I'm like, I was thinking maybe, you know, Germany, and I also know that you don't like where it's too hot, so, you know, like it's over the summer, it's going to be cooler in the Alps. I'm like trying to know all of his triggers, and I had planned around that. So I'm like, okay, so we're going to go there, and I got the frequent flyer miles. I signed you up for a credit card, just so you know, so like, you know, your flight's covered. We're going to actually fly separately because that's how it'll work for us. So I'll get there free, but we'll get there free. So like, you know, so I knew that was his thing. And then, you know, when we got there, I was like, we already have the apartment, so we can like be making food, so we're not going to be going out to eat all the time. And, you know, and I was like, oh, and I've learned from traveling with my girlfriends, we're going to go picnicking a lot. It's really fun. You get to go, and there's all this free stuff. You guys were saying this yesterday. There's so much free stuff. So I'm like, you know, anytime you want to see, just go to this email. It remained unread, but like, go to this email because you're going to see all the free stuff that we can do that's, you know, going to be great. And so I planned all this, and I was like, okay, if I plan this all and it goes really perfectly, then he's gonna be like, oh, of course I get the benefit. That was great. And sure enough, within 12 hours of us going on our flight, he lost his wallet, and now I'm like, I'm never gonna convince him that So he loses his wallet, running to the motor vehicle commission, right, you know, right before we're about to board our plane. Everything's all chaotic. I don't drive, I mean I can, but I don't really like to drive stick shift. We had gotten a car rental, I'd already set it up, and of course we were going to Europe where they drive stick shifts all the time, that, you know, to get an automatic car, it's double, and of course the cost, I'm not going to pay the double, right? So now he doesn't have his license, so now I, in order to rent the car, have to drive on the Autobahn through the Alps in the stick shift car, and like the journey of us going up this mountain on hairpins, and he's shifting, and he's like, clutch, brake, and this is our first trip, and still somehow he was like, by the end of it, he was like, you know,
Well, because I was going to say, my thing is like clearing those hurdles of why I don't want to go, and it's usually because of I just don't want to spend the money, or I need now I need a hardcore internet connection, you know, things like that, and like those are the real reasons I don't want to go. It's not because I don't want to go to Costa Rica. Costa Rica is great. It's because I'm worried about the logistical, like that was why was the first like barrier, the logistical problems behind it. And in those situations, I'd rather just like flight rather than fight, and just say, well, I already know I have these things here. So, but then once we can clear those things away, for me it becomes easier, like personally.
Yeah.
So
it became, and I think I'll actually go to this slide. I don't know that you guys can see it all that well, but different things in terms of what we've experienced or what we've found from other people who are kind of sharing their the way that they've kind of worked together when their families, and again, not just their partners, but their children too. When their children are saying like, I want this to be part of my life, or I want this to be how we're spending our days, and that might look different from the parents. You know, some of these words I found were kind of themes throughout some of those solutions, or the things that I found to be most inspiring solutions. So mine was that, you know, I know the way he ticks. So if I wanted to present something I really wanted, and I thought it would be beneficial for us all, I just wanted to taste it out. I'd be like, do a taste of it, try it, and if he still does not like it, then we'll try another solution, right? Like maybe it would just be that Avery and I would travel on our own, or if she didn't want to, then I would meet that fix with my girlfriend still again, you know? But it was a lot of it was just understanding the way he ticks and pacing myself. So for me, slow moving was really a huge thing for us, right? It took us, you know, many years to be here where we're like, oh yeah, we're on the same vision, we love our life, and we're, you know, and it's completely personalized to us, but it was really slow moving, and I understood, I guess, that we needed that, because it was like, oh well, and that's where the chessboard comes in, right? Like I know I want to get to there, but I just need to kind of be patient and just place things out. And through that process, like I said, it wasn't my vision that was coming alive. What I thought was on the other end was actually our vision that came together, because now Doug is saying, oh, I liked that trip to Germany. I really liked when we were staying in the Alps, not when we were staying in Munich. So our next trip was all based off of when we were in more outdoorsy settings. It was where we felt really connected. So we were shaping then things together, and where he was saying, I liked being in other cultures. I think I might want to stay in North America for a little bit. And so now I'm, incorporating what he's saying. So it was that slow moving process, but now it was his voice also, not just mine. And together we were kind of planning it. Yeah.
And one other thing we were talking about, just like from a visioning thing that came out recently, and it's not travel related, was we were, we moved to a new town, and we realized pretty quickly that we don't have many neighbors, and so
It's a beach town, so it's like a lot of.
It's all second homes, so like we have no neighborhood at all. It's all really just kind of vacated houses during this time of year. So we started worrying that who was Avery going to play with, like where was she going to get kid interaction, because we just weren't able to substitute. We can't easily substitute being a 5-year-old around the house for many hours a day, or even for 1 hour a day. So we started looking at sort of alternative schooling as to go for a part-time thing, and we found something philosophically that was on the same page with us, and like financially was in the realm of doable. And this came out of like us having this sort of like vision of also wanting to have other kids to play with, have other kids around, getting that interaction. And so we tried it out, and we found in trying it out that it just wasn't right. Even though, and I think but it was, and I felt almost bad because I was the one that brought it up, but because I felt like I was wanting it to work, and then it wasn't working, but then we kept trying it, even though we tried it for like even one more day than we should have, I would say, because like Avery was pretty clear. She was like, nah, not so much for me. And Breen was like, kind of on the fence, and I was like, let's try it. And then we went the first day, and it felt totally out of rhythm with everything we've been doing up until that point. Like, get up, get dressed, it's time for school, like, where's your lunch? We got to get there in time for morning meeting. Come on, let's go. And then like having to figure out who's going to pick her up, and then we did that the first day, and then we did it the second day, and then we called it quits. And I was like, we talked about it later. We said, this is not fitting into. I want certain parts of this, like the kid, interaction and all that stuff, but the other parts really don't fit into what we're doing, and so we need to just sort of pivot off of that and figure out something else. So I guess my point is just not all about travel. Like for us, like it's about like the other pieces that we're trying to do too, which is community building and having easy access to friends and things like that. And we thought we had found this thing that fit into what our idea of, it's vision 1,000 times, but like into this vision of what we had, and it just didn't. But we were close to probably jamming a square peg in a round hole because it fit other parts to it. So it took a lot of talking and soul searching and trying to figure out if it was correct, and ultimately it wasn't. But it was only because we already had a baseline of other things that we wanted to do. So we already knew the baseline of, well, these are the other things that are important to us, and this. It's almost unfair that they call all these things school, I realize, because this is just not a school, but they all fall under the same umbrella. So it just wasn't fitting into the other things that we had sort of planned out and visioned out, or like knew that we wanted. And we didn't need to have the vision written down to sort of just look at ourselves and say, and Avery too, because Avery was like, nah, bounce, So I think just having sort of maybe not a written document, but a general idea of all the things that you kind of want to be going to helps inform all of the decisions, not just the traveling piece of it. Because I know we've talked a lot about that too. But.
Yeah, and what you said, like we don't have, when we say vision, we don't have something that's written down, something that's memorialized. It's just, we have an unwritten understanding of what we want. We want to be able to, celebrate and respect everyone's being, everyone's happiness within our family unit. And so, my individual happiness is contingent on everyone's happiness. And so we want to find that sweet spot, and that means that we're going to be bringing together differences and and celebrating those differences because they're going to push us in ways. Some of us might be pushing more than others, but even, we're just always, pushing ourselves to see new things and experience new things, and then enjoy that life fully. So there are other barriers that we can talk about, but I'd also love to just open it up to some more discussion, or where people are at with their own, any barriers or creative solutions, things you've seen, or even just, what vision means to you and your family.
Or we just end it.
That too.
This is our first, we just finished our first year of officially calling ourselves unschoolers. So I feel like we've spent the whole year not doing nothing, but not pushing ourselves to do any particular thing. And I feel like I've created a hole. You know what I'm saying? Like an emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I guess, good.
Like, are you comfortable with silence kind of emptiness?
No. So the kind of emptiness of now what? We've eliminated running off to school, we've eliminated the homework stress, teacher, we've actually cut off the people who live in our neighborhood who are terrible people anyway. And we've made a little village with our own little friends, which is great. And so I just feel like I'm at the point where I've sort of emptied out a lot of the toxic things in our family, and I don't know, I just feel like this sense of emptiness. Now what? And so
That's right.
yeah, like a readiness, but I don't know what. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to put in there.
Yeah.
I don't know what direction to take. I don't know.
We were talking about, Claudine and I were talking about this, actually, when we were saying kind of unschooling was such a slow process that, seeing it unfold, looking for the learning and finding the joy in the simple, was something that was, pressing the brakes on life in a way that can be, like you said, jolting, especially when you're switching from something that's going really fast-paced and everything's kind of, you got this, you got that. And so we were talking about it specifically from, introducing your partner. Your partner comes to hang out with you and your kid for the day, and they're like, so what are we doing? We're just going to stand here? This is what we're just the learning happening's right here. They're just playing in a pile of dirt. When are we going to do something? And we're like, no, that is the doing, right? You see the doing right there? They're playing in the dirt, and you're like,
The milling.
yeah, it's like a new filter with which to use, view life, to see that learning everywhere. And it can be that sort of how comfortable am I just, getting there, being there, just kind of being still and watching all of this happening around me. And then sometimes it was just, there was that for me, that piece of I've gotten really, much more comfortable than I thought, going slowly through life. And then in other parts, I'm I feel like maybe there was something I enjoyed in that, and maybe as I've taken a step back and realized if I feel like I need a little bit more to my day because I see us as sort of co-learning through life together, then maybe I will introduce something that I'm I was thinking about doing this. This is something I really enjoy. Do you want to join me and doing it together, or introducing it as something we can do together? So that way, all again, one of the barriers that we were kind of talking about also was just making sure that everyone in the family is sort of getting out of their day what they need. So, and that can be really hard, the more people you have in your family and everything too. But yeah, I think there's a lot of that there. If anyone else has a chance. You guys want to rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, there's it's like a process, right? So I kind of feel like you're in that, you cleared it, and maybe the path isn't spoken, but give your time
comes to hang out with us, and he's like confused. He's like, who are you? Because I'm just totally opposite. But that's a process that I went through, that I saw, that I went through with my children, and they almost showed me a way. And it's harder now for him to find that way because he's not living in the day-to-day. So I find that I have to. Oh, sweetie. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. Hold that thought. I think also like it's important to create space for conversations around this, and to be able to say like, as a family, what are we interested in? We want to set an intention that you're gonna dive head first and study this for a month, and we're gonna all like support you and go on adventures where we learn this together, or I have this project that I really want to do, so I'm going to spend every morning working on it. And whether or not that happens, there's this idea that there's space to sort of pick passions and follow them and dive into them, and have a place to share that with the family, where if other people want to join that they can, or where you can find ways to have people doing separate things all at once.
Yeah.
And sort of you're now in a space where you can like actively create that.
I'm having trouble even picturing this because I grew up in a family where we didn't do anything. Like, it was what you described. Go to work, everybody comes home after work or after school, dinner, do homework, whatever, and we go to sleep. We don't, like, I don't know, I just feel like we don't have anything.
Yeah.
Part of
Well,
it's
do you
also
have a-
knowing your the free community resources that are around you, and being able to say like, there's this time at the library where you can go, and I know this expert in the sciences who can like show us all this stuff, and tapping into
so
what your kids are
That's
into,
what
and finding
homeschooling
community
was.
resources.
That's what I was started to do. And my kids were like, you don't want to do that. Stop making us stop signing up for stuff. Stop dragging us over here and over there. So I stopped. They even made me quit forest school.
Because they didn't want to.
Because they were like, stop dragging us there.
Leave them at home.
That would be
So you're saying, like, you want to be respecting their voice and their wishes, but you're also trying to figure out if that's matching what you're looking for, or you're still trying to see.
I feel like we're all out of balance. Like my son is a little bit like he doesn't know what he wants to do. My daughter doesn't know what she wants to do, and I don't know what I want to do. My husband's just like, whatever, I gotta go to work. You want to figure it out. And that's where we're at. It's so uncomfortable. So maybe it just is what it is for now. But that's where I'm just searching for like what's next. Where would it go from here?
Do you have an idea in your mind of what you would like it to look like? Yeah.
Is there something that you have that you want to like dive into?
Yeah, a ton of stuff.
I mean, because you can just do that, right?
And
Like
just
you can be
leave
like,
them
I
behind,
want to
right?
take Italian cooking classes, and I'm gonna go do this.
Right.
And you guys can come
If
with
you want to
me
sit
or
on the
not.
internet or whatever to do that,
And
Yeah, I think
sort
there's
of,
like an
follow
idea that you
that.
have to have these plans. Like school's pretty good about teaching you that, like, now we're on to the next lesson, and now we're on to the next lesson, and that's probably maybe where some of it comes from too. Is that
Right.
it's
The
just
deschooling process.
yeah,
right?
like we've been pretty well trained to feel like there needs to be something come. I still feel it now about myself, but even in like you said, like in just moments of, oh, what am I doing right now? Should be doing something. And then, but maybe I think that's just more of a societal thing that we've just been trained to think really than more than it's actually a problem. I don't know if it's actually a problem to just sit around sometimes, as long as you're like not starving to death or whatever. As your needs are met. I don't know. I think that's, yeah, I think it's maybe just more of a society thing than an actual problem.
Does anybody else have any thoughts related to that?
I do. Yeah, for a long time I was kind of in a mode where, like, I grew up public schooled, and I was just in this mode of always feeling like I needed to be doing what I perceived other people wanted me to be doing, and I wasn't tuning into my own needs. And I think you know what you like to be doing, but it's just for me I didn't. And so for me it was more like, so what am I feeling? First of all, before I could even tune into my needs, I was like, what am I feeling? And like not being afraid to like tune into my feelings. And then those would guide actually from there make that a part of my life when I'm eating? How do I like get that? How do I first of all express that and then bring that to myself? And it's just such a process, and especially when you're trying to help your kids tune into those things, you know. But like part of it for me, like with my kids, it's just like noticing like what kind of lights them up, you know, and just like encouraging, just like noticing that, like, oh, looks like you really enjoy that, and tell me more about that, and how do you feel about that, or, you know, just helping them explore maybe some of those things for themselves, and I don't know, not in like a pushy way, but you know, just like, so how do you feel about that? Oh, why do you feel that way? Or talking about our feelings, I think, helps a lot.
You've also started taking care of your own needs really well too, and she's doing voice lessons now. She's like kind of, in a way, you could say, setting an example for the kids, showing them like when we take care of our own needs, our kids see that and like, okay, well they're doing stuff that they're enjoying and they're passionate about. Maybe I can do that too, and they start to tune in.
I've been thinking about this. I think like I could blow the whole homeschooling budget on myself. I could totally do that. You don't want to go to classes?
Only one way to find out if it works.
I'm going.
And make yourself, you know, come alive with the stuff that you're excited about, and your kids will see that and be encouraged.
But I think they need like a recovery time
Yes.
from
You know
this
what?
system.
That's so totally true. We are so wounded and so. It's really like coming out of it numbness.
So they need to cocoon for a while, and then
Yeah.
they'll become butterflies and probably get
I hope so.
and see next year. Or if not, the year after.
Yeah, what do they say? How many, what's that phrase where they say how many years you were in school?
A relationship.
Yeah, how long you need to de-school from it. Well, so is there anything else that anybody wanted to kind of bring up or talk about? Any questions they had or thoughts they had in, you know, raising up their children's voices or in coming together as partners?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I know Doug definitely enjoyed it. Thank you guys so
Yeah,
much.
thanks.
It was really wonderful. Yeah.